so the session's not just over when it's over. And if we've had a big chat about something and you want to look back at it, you can see it. Okay, so I've got it on record. It is purely you that can. It's only you that will ever have the link. Right? Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to check with you. Is there any way you can share your screen with me? Just briefly. You don't have to do it for the whole session, but just so I can see.
I'm not a heavy Discord user, so...
That's okay. So there is a... Are you on a single screen, by the way? Is that what I said on your notes here?
Yes, the Samsung 49-inch.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, awesome. Yes, it's a really good single screen. Yeah, so there should be like a little share your screen button in our coaching voice chat room that we're in right now. Is that there for you at all? Oh, yeah.
Work?
Hang on. Are you doing it? Yeah, sorry. I clicked it. Yep, I can see now. Perfect. Okay, this is great. So I just want to see a couple of things. I'm sure you've got these options set correctly. I've just got a checklist of stuff that I always run through before we start the first session. And don't worry,
Sure.
I'll add this on in terms of time at the end, so don't worry if this takes a few minutes to get sorted. Okay, so the first thing, you've got Garage 61 installed. That's cool. And I assume you've got it running because it's always running in the background, so that's cool. Next thing, are you happy with your field of view? Yeah, all looks pretty good to me. So yeah, we can tick that one off. All good. Right, this is one that people often have set, if not incorrectly, at least differently to how I would say is optimal. So just do me a favour, just go on your options screen for me. So just kind of hop out of the car and just click options. I just wanted to see what we've got down here for neck motion. Okay, yeah, so you have it on the setting that everyone tends to have it on by default. We'll leave it exactly as it is for the moment. I'm not going to get you to change anything, but after this first run, I'm going to get you to try neck motion on 0%. Essentially, at the moment, the way this is set up, I think this is just how iRacing comes as default, because every time I see people live streaming quite often, and you can just tell immediately that neck motion is on 100%, because the camera is like bobbing up and down on the screen, whereas in my view, and generally most like pro sim racers and certainly F1 simulators at F1 factories and stuff, the virtual cockpit, so the cockpit you can see on screen, your dash and everything like that, should be fixed to your real world cockpit, if that makes any sense. So you're, when you're sitting in your rig, it's not like the dashboard will be moving up and down relative to you. So I tend to find this is a positive change with most people, that if we fix your virtual and your real world cockpit together, it takes some of the guesswork out of what the car is actually doing, like whether it is actually sliding or whether we're just going over a bump, or it's basically takes away the graphical guesswork. So we'll try that after we've done a run, because I want you to have like a back-to-back trial with that. It might feel weird when you first pull out of the pits, because you'll just be used to the way that the image moves on the screen. But most people, once we've done one run, I ask them about it later on in the session and say, how was it? And they go, oh wow, yeah, I completely forgot we'd even changed it. So anyway, I just wanted to check that. Okay, cool. So that's the next thing on my checklist. We'll leave it for the moment though. So next up, pedal pressure check. Okay, again, you've probably got these things completely fine because you've been using iRacing for long enough. But just do me a favour and hit the brake pedal as hard as you would in the biggest braking zone. Okay, and now, yeah, exactly. I was going to say, just reduce the pedal, reduce the pressure as if you were kind of turning into the corner. Cool. Okay, so it looks to me like you're easily able to get maximum braking. How stiff is your brake pedal? Out of interest, I can't obviously feel it, but is it easily movable? Like, could you get?
It's the CSL. I think it's the CSL Fanatec load cells.
Yeah. I think I used to have the same one. I think so. You can
the like matte black.
Yeah,
I will say it's stiff enough that when I started left foot braking at first, I had a bit of a hard time with it. Now I feel comfortable with it. I think I could go. I think there's a stiffer set of springs in the box. I haven't changed that.
To be honest, for the moment, in this kind of car with ABS, it's not a big deal. If we were doing Formula Ford or F3 or something, and we were driving a car where it's really crucial to not lock up, obviously, this becomes a bigger talking point. I think for the moment in the GTs you're in, it's actually generally a positive thing to be able to achieve maximum braking without too much effort. So that's cool. We'll leave that as it is, but it's good to know what pedals you've got. So if in the future we wanted to swap something out, we could. That's cool. Okay, next up, this sounds super obvious, but just turn the steering wheel 90 degrees to the left for me. Yeah, okay. I know it sounds dumb because of course you've got that right, because how would you be driving otherwise? But I have honestly had people where I've asked them, is your steering all good? And they're like, yeah, everything's fine. And when I get them to do that, the steering wheel turns a 360 degree rotation on the screen there. And they wondered why it was so sharp every time they tried to turn in. So that's cool. I just wanted to check that. And you're happy with the weight of your steering, how much feedback you're getting from it. You can feel the grip building up as you turn into a corner, for example.
I think so. I've played a little bit with the where you run some laps and then you like click the auto a couple times to get the strength lined up. I don't have it turned up super heavy in my the base itself settings, but I think it's pretty solid.
And you're using a direct drive wheel I've got here in the notes. Is that right?
Yes, one of those Sim Magic wheels.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, well, we can leave all that for the moment. I just want to check those things purely because, sometimes you uncover a thing which is like an obvious issue, and I'd kick myself if we didn't do that at the start. The next thing on my list, or the last thing, we don't need to worry about because I think I've fixed the setups in this session. Maybe I haven't. Well, anyway, just make sure you're running the baseline setup because we're not actually going for any particular lap time. We're not actually running a real race here or anything. I'm not really interested in what the setup is. It doesn't really matter for us here. I did some laps this morning in this car. Setup felt good. I don't really ever drive this. In fact, I've never driven this car until today because I had to buy it this morning, and I really like it. It was really good fun. So, yeah, we'll leave the setup on baseline. That's the only other thing. So, cool. So what I want you to do, if it's good with you, is go out and run 5 timed laps. I'm not going to talk to you. I'll just put myself on mute. I'm just going to watch, and you'll see me watching when you watch back if you do happen to watch back the video later. I might talk to future Jeff, as in, whilst I'm muted on Discord, I might say some stuff to the video so that I'm not distracting you in real time. But when you watch it back, you'll see what my thoughts are at the time. But then we'll have a little debrief afterwards. Maybe look at some data. Maybe look at some comparison of what I was doing versus what you were doing. I might learn from you. It's not always that I go out and I'm able to be perfect. So we might have some discussion about what you're doing really well. But anyway, we'll do 5 time laps and then we'll kind of regroup. So just treat this as kind of a warm up, just an initial feel. Because I, at this moment, have absolutely no idea what to expect from your driving. I'm expecting, with your real-world experience, I'm expecting a certain level, but I'm going to find out in a moment. So yeah, 5 time laps, out lap, 5 time laps, and then you can just exit the car back to the pits.
Sounds good. Just going to turn the game volume down a bit.
Right, I'm going on mute now. So future Jeff, if you're watching this video back, I'll just let you know what I've been looking at so far. Because I've run some laps myself this morning, I've got a kind of rough idea of how I expect the lap to be driven. You know, it's based on my own experience. What I'm anticipating the car is going to be doing in different situations. What speed we should be expecting through each corner. So first of all, fundamentally, as expected, based on our chat and with the experience you've already got, you're not doing anything basically wrong. You're not doing any obvious. Your lines are good. Obviously we can always tweak little things, and we'll talk about that. But you know what you're aiming for. You know outside, inside, outside. Normal, basic racing line stuff. You know how to brake hard. You're not using, from what I can see without looking at the data, you're not using excess steering angle. The main thing that I can see, and we'll talk about this when I'm off of mute, the main thing I can see is that we're underutilising the amount of particularly front grip we've got on the entries and in the mid-corner of some of the corners. So I expect when we look at the data, we're going to see quite a big delta between my apex speeds in some of the corners and yours, and also in the entry speeds to some. There will be some sections where we might see that you're actually better, in which case we'll make sure you keep doing them. I think potentially your line into the first proper hairpin, the first really slow right-hander looks very good. It looks like you're maybe executing that better than I did this morning. But there's a lot of other corners where I think we're leaving some pace on the table because our front tyres aren't being stressed. It's like we're protecting the front tyre life. So we'll talk about that in real time in a moment. We'll have a look at the data, and we'll see if I'm right, and we'll see what you think. Great job, man. That is nice and pretty consistent as well for a first run. Can you hear me all right still, by the way?
Yes.
Awesome. Just do me a favour and hop out of the car if you haven't already, just so that the data uploads. And I'm just going to grab your best lap once that's loaded. But we won't dive straight in and look at the data. I just want to have it loaded so that we can refer to it afterwards. I know you're going to do more laps. You're probably going to do faster laps. But that's a real good starting point, and because you're consistent, I know there's a couple of 110s in there that were slightly slower, but we're still within, straight away, all of your laps there were within half a second, basically. So that's a really, really good starting point. What it means is we can talk about things if we change things, or if I get you to try and modify an approach to a certain type of corner or whatever. You're almost certainly going to see that consistently every lap. It's not like you're struggling to keep it on the track or something like that. So let me just have a look for your data in here. Teammates from Get Faster Faster. Let's have a look. So we want laps from today. And what was the best? 109.802. I think that's going to be this one here. Yeah, I found it. Let's add that. Awesome. Okay, cool. I'm just going to quickly change the colours as well, just because I generally run myself in blue and you in red, just so we know who we're looking at. Cool. Okay, so we'll look at that in a moment, but before we do that, let's actually just have a look at physically what you're doing out on track. So when I run this lap back, oh, by the way, are you able to see my screen?
Maybe I need to stop sharing. I only see my screen.
You should be able to have both. If you click on mine, you should be able to enlarge mine. And I think I'm sharing in like 1440p or something, so it should hopefully be decent size. Just let me know when you can see that. That looks like it. Awesome. Okay, right, so I'm just going to basically run over your best lap. So you did your best lap at the end. Awesome. But you also did a pretty close one to that on lap 2, which is good. I was talking to future Jeff as well, briefly, just to say what we're about to say now. So, first of all, fundamentally, basics, obviously all good. I thought you were going to be pretty much there or thereabouts, and you clearly are. You know what a racing line is. You're not struggling to get the car stopped for the corners. You're not making obvious big mistakes or anything like that. So we are immediately jumping a few steps that I would go through with lots of people that I'm coaching, and we're moving immediately on to much more nuanced driving things, which is cool. That's good. So let's just look at the lap, and I'll go from a couple of different angles. So, first of all, like I said, I know you can't hear this. If there's something you need to hear, you will hear it if you watch the video later, but I'll also just describe what I'm hearing. Sure. I'm mainly listening for when you're lifting off the throttle and that kind of thing, and how smoothly you're getting on the gas. Aside from that, it's not really important that you can hear it or not on this. We're just going to go through the lap corner by corner. So straight off, normally the first thing I have to say to people is you're not using all the track, but you clearly are. You're even widening turn 1, which is awesome. So that's a really, really good start. Keep doing that. But straight away, I think, and I can't see your gears on here. We'll have a look when we go on the data. And I can't see your, I can see your speed, but I don't have a comparison to my own speed. But it sounds like we are not leaning on the front tyres as hard as we could through this first corner. So immediately, and I think this is a pattern we're going to see through some other corners, I think our biggest time loss is being too kind on the front end. I think we are treating the front tyres too nicely, which would be a great thing if we were in a super long race and we know we're front limited and we know the front tyres are going to wear out. But let's assume that isn't the case, and that we've got decent tyre wear, and it's not a 10-hour race that we need the front tyres to last for. And it seems like, I think we are over braking. I think we're doing too much braking with the brakes and not enough of the deceleration just with the turn in itself. So I'm going to just put a pin in that. We'll have a look at the data and see if that is the case, because I haven't seen your trace yet. But it feels like we could carry more entry speed, even if the apex or roughly the apex speed maybe could be similar. I think this phase from here to here, I think we're just under pushing the car. But we'll leave that. Let's see if it happens in other places. And what I could hear there was we downshifted, but by here we're already back up a gear. So again, I think if we carried a bit more speed, you wouldn't need to do that additional downshift. But we'll look at the data and see if I'm talking crap. Okay, through here. One thing that is noticeable for me, just visually, based on my experience of driving this morning, is the way that you're able to open up turn 2. You know how you're on the right-hand side of the track here, and you're able to get a really nice, easy line through here. I don't think you should be able to. I think if you've gone through turn 1 quick enough, you wouldn't have it this easy. So it looks to me like this line you're taking to here is really nice. And if I was able to be here, I'd do the same thing. I don't think I am, though. I think the compromise is better just barreling on through here with a bit more speed. But we'll find out for sure when we compare the data. So obviously this is good, and this is really good. And using all the track here, really, really good as well. So cool, happy with that. Keep doing that. This is the entry where I think you might be actually doing it better than me. We'll find out. So, as you know, nipping that little curb there probably isn't desirable, just because they're big sausage curbs, but you probably didn't mean to. It's very, very hard to judge the width of this car from inside, particularly that side. So, I think generally here we're going to try and avoid these sausage curbs, but I definitely clipped 1 or 2 by mistake on my lap as well.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I realized I clipped it in real time.
Yeah, it kind of just sends you a little bit wider than you mean to, but all good. Now we have a bit of a lift through here. You can't hear it, but I can hear. It's full throttle, and then it's like just a little bit of a lift off. We'll see that it probably doesn't affect you very much because it's not a very big, long exit afterwards. But again, I'm just going to remember that when we look at the data, just so we can check if there is a time loss from that lift. It might be that by keeping it tighter, you've gained back what you would have lost by staying full throttle, but we'll see.
I was having trouble through this section. I was actually running the sprint open when I was practicing.
Okay. So this setup's just not very good that we're running now.
Well, actually, it's more comfortable because the back end would get real light here.
Okay.
I was spinning a lot through here.
Right.
Maybe that's where that lift comes from.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, it's actually not a bad setup, this baseline. It is quite stable. It might not be the quickest one available,
And yeah, after having driven it, it's a little more comfortable.
That all looks good to me through there. So the only thing I'd say is maybe, like turn 1, there might be a bit of apex speed left on the table, like between here and the apex.
Okay.
It almost looks like the car turns in too well. Like, so, I mean, we'll have a look at the speed. So you start turning in about 105k. Just for comparison, I might be talking absolute rubbish. You turn at 105. I'm just going to look at my lap here and just see if there is any additional grip to be used. The data will make it more obvious, but come on, load. So 105 was what you turned in at. I'm just going to see. Right, so I'm starting to turn in about now. 125. Yeah, so it is that my eyes weren't deceiving me. I think there's a bit more grip available in the initial phase of the corner. The great thing is, if this is a pattern we see in loads of places, and you're able to, and we kind of tweak this element of your driving, you'll find time everywhere. So that's really good. Yeah, okay. That is exactly how it felt when I was watching, but until you see the comparison, it's impossible to know. Right, let's go back to you and go back to that same spot. It's good that this is a short lap, because when you have to do this fast forward through the Nürburgring, it takes forever. Right, so I'm imagining down the Hangar Straight. There's not much to change, but we'll just watch anyway. I'm just going to watch this through in real time once, and then we'll go back in slow-mo. So again, I think that's a really decent effort. The only criticism I'd have of this is I think you might be going in slightly too late with the turn-in point. I think we might be able to... Yeah, we're almost at the end of this curve, turning in by the green, or just before we get to this green painted area. It feels like we could start turning in about here. But let's see, if your way turns out to be the better way when we look at the data, then we'll definitely keep it. So we'll have a little comparison in a moment. But the way you then approach the corner, the way you then are like modulating the throttle, being really smooth on the gas through here, it's good. Yeah, it almost feels like you're able to get too tight to the inside. Not that it's not bad to be tight, but it's like the car is doing it too easily, which just suggests to me that we might have overslowed it here, because although it's nice for the car to do what you want it to do, if that's at the expense of a big chunk of time on the way to the apex, then obviously there's a potentially better compromise to be had. So
right.
It might be, from what I've seen on a few of those corners so far, it might be that what we're going to get you to do for the next run is to do the same line, the same initial line, so the same kind of run up to the turning point, the same kind of braking, but we're going to roll off the brakes and just get the car turned in slightly earlier. So it might be like 10 to 15 meters earlier turn in and 10 to 15 kilometers per hour more speed at that phase. But we'll see. Right, so yeah, it's like it definitely feels like you're able to point the car in too well. Like it shouldn't be this easy. That's what it feels like. Right, let's carry on here. So final couple of slow corners. So this is hard. There's a little bit of time to gain. I'm sure you meant to be closer. It's very, very hard to consistently hit this, especially when you're trying not to hit the red bit. But obviously there's maybe a couple of tenths in that corner there just from the line. So we can be slightly tighter there. Now that's all good. Now I'm just going to hear what you're doing on the throttle. We had a bit of a lift there, like a half lift through there. That should be easily full throttle after like lap 2, once the tyres are warm. So
I got a little traction control there, was why I lifted. I know I did it in at least one of these laps.
Potentially. Let me just have another listen. Yeah, so what's happening? It might have got slightly sideways and then you lifted as a consequence. But I'll tell you the reason why. Yeah, there's that little moment just here where I get slightly sideways. So here. Now it starts to break into a little bit of yaw right there, and so you probably lifted. Now, the reason that happened, we just turned into the final corner slightly early, which is a bit different to what we've done everywhere else. So, for a start, I don't think we were all... Yeah, we had a little bit of margin on the curb. I'm not going to be too hard on you for that one, because it's not a lot. But it makes quite a bit of difference on this corner, because at full throttle, this corner, the car tends to still be pretty much on the limit. So any extra inch of entry space you can give it will be slightly easier. But the main thing is you just turned in a little too sharply, like here. We were slightly too early. You're like aiming to the grass here, if you see what I mean. We're just slightly aiming over here. And the car, you see where the car is pointed right now. It's just, it looks like the trajectory, if I go down on this, it looks like the trajectory is kind of towards that red. If we carried on this natural line the car's on now, it's just towards the red curb. It's kind of just a little bit too early there. And then that's obviously why we have this moment of oversteer, and you then, you do the right thing. You adjust your steering and you let the car run a bit wider. But it's not a major thing. You probably didn't do that every lap at all. So let's not worry about that too much. I think the key things, the main things are going to be turn 1. Let me just go straight back to the start. We won't labour this too much longer. But so it's going to be, I think we're going to carry more speed here. And I would probably want to be turning in already, like about now. I can already see I want to go from here to that apex there and use a bunch of curb. And we turn in like, yeah, it feels like about 10 metres later, like near the end of this curb. And it's going to be the other, this next right here, and we're going to try and carry a bit more speed. So basically come off the brakes earlier between here and just use the front end. Use the fact that the tyres are turning into the corner and your speed trace is going to continue to drop, just not as much as it will drop by being hard on the brakes. We're going to make it more of like a, we want our graph, and I'm going to look at the graph in just a moment, we want the graph to be more like down to a peak and then back up again, rather than like down a little bit flat and then back up again, if that makes any sense. It might make more sense when we now look at the data. So let me bring that up. It should be on the right page. Okay, here we go. What I'm going to do is make me slightly lighter blue, because that dark blue is a bit hard to see. Let's kind of go with that. Okay, and we're just going to zoom in on a couple of things. So let's just go turn 1 to begin with. I really like knowing for sure. I don't like kind of guessing whether or not a thing is better. So I want to know. So what I was saying about that turn 1 speed definitely has shown itself here. And there's a couple of reasons. If we look at your red line, as in literally the line you were taking from the corner, the reason I think you're slowing down quite a lot more into turn 1 than the car can do is because you're expecting to need to be all the way to the right-hand side on the exit of turn 1. Remember that? Remember I said it was too easy for you to turn into turn 2?
Right.
And when you look at the blue trace into turn 1, my line, I go all the way wide to the exit curb, because turn 2 is such a gentle turn that you can still get through there pretty much at full throttle. In fact, I can see I'm full throttle, and still get back to the turn-in point for the next corner, even though you're pressed up to the inside. So that basically frees you up to carry a bunch more speed through turn 1 if you don't think you need to be on the right on the exit, if that makes sense. So, yeah. Long and short of it, even if we don't nail this perfectly on the next run, I want you to up your entry speed to turn 1. At the moment, your minimum speed is coming at, so you're getting to your minimum speed at 366 metres into the lap. And that's well before we get into the corner. So I can see on the track picture, that section of the track, 366, you're like here. You're kind of on the entry. So you're slowing down early and then getting a lovely drive through the corner. I want you to move your minimum speed until much later. So at the apex, basically. So that is another 100 metres later. Do meters mean anything to you, by the way? I'm not using freedom units. I'm rubbish with this. Yeah.
They kind of have to, because that's what all.
It's like it's the language of European motorsport, I'm afraid.
Right.
But yeah, a certain number of yards. Is it 60 yards? I don't know. Basically, we're going to move your minimum speed from the turn-in point, which is where it currently is, to the middle of the corner, because you're doing, as you can see from the braking trace down here as well, you're braking a hell of a lot harder than I am, and a bit earlier, and you're getting it all done quite early. Whereas I'm just staying on the brakes a little bit later, not all the way up to the apex, but a little bit later, and then doing a bit of coasting from the middle of the turn-in phase up to the apex, and at that point, boom, back onto full throttle. So that's what we're going to try and do, because there's clearly a chunk of time there. When you look at the whole lap, the vast majority of the time that you lose, to my ideal lap there, was in turn 1. We lose 0.8 of a second by the time we get to turn 2. So that's one corner is definitely the focus, because you're only losing 1 second over the entire lap. So it's only 0.2 through the rest of the lap. So turn 1 is going to be the focus.
Okay.
But just for argument's sake, let's just look at some other corners. Okay, so as suspected, turn 2, you're gaining time on me a little bit. So you enter turn 2. So let's say this is the entry here. You're 0.7 behind. You exit turn 2, 6.5 behind. So if we ignore the following kink where you have your big lift, which I can now see in the data, you're actually quicker than me into turn 2. So keep your speed and your approach to that second hairpin about the same. The only thing I'll say to that is when we look at the line, you then get to see maybe why you were able to make that gain. On this section, you are going a bit deeper on the exit, and that's actually why you then have to have that lift.
Right.
So in reality, you do gain a bit. You then lose a similar amount by having to lift through the following left. So let's just keep that in mind, that we might want to not quite go as wide as you're going on the exit there, because we want to be flat out through that little kink. But that's not a big drama. That's not a big thing. Next corner, if I just zoom back out, the next little right. So from the entry. Yeah, okay, so it is a pretty similar thing to turn 1 in terms of the technique and why we're losing time. It's just on a much smaller scale because it's a much shorter, slower corner. So we're just slowing it early. So your minimum speed is coming on the entry phase, just like turn 1. And I want your minimum speed to be at the apex. That's literally the difference. So you're just doing more of the deceleration early, and then it's a bit too easy. There's this kind of flat bit on the speed. I know there's a slight rise. That's because you realise you're going too slow, and you actually get on the gas early and then come back off the gas again. But ideally, we want to be going quick enough so you physically couldn't get on the gas and still make the apex, if that makes sense. We want to be just carrying that higher speed up to the apex. So if we just have a look. So basically, we start off on the entry, it's like 5 kilometres an hour. By the way, kilometres an hour is a bit alien to me as well. But I'm just going with it because it's inescapable. But then as we get further into that turn-in phase, the gap widens, and then we're like 20. Oh, we said it, didn't we? We watched the video, like 20 kilometres an hour different. And that then does translate to a reasonable chunk of time. So that's that. Let's look down at Stowe. I think you're doing a good job here. I was saying we can probably go in a bit faster. Well, actually, if you look at this, you lose a bit on the entry, but then I lose down to the next corner. So by the time we get to the next turning point, I'd say you've actually gained 1/10 or so. So your approach to Stowe, it might be I just didn't optimize it, but your approach to Stowe, where you're going in a little bit slower, seems to work better in this car. I'm generally going into here in pretty high downforce single seaters, and so you can carry higher entry speed. You can see what I've tried to do with the blue line here, but I am definitely suffering down the next straight. So let's not on this next run try and change what you're doing into Stowe, because I'll look at some other laps that I did. Maybe I did it better on a different lap, but really it won't be a lot different to this. And your compromise seems to have the better outcome. So you are exactly a second down on the way in, and then by the time we get to the next braking point, it's under a second. So let's leave Stowe alone. Final couple of corners. So let's look in these little tight corners here. Okay, so do we have a time gain or loss? So at the turn-in point, let's just say here, 0.9. Very, very little to choose between the times here. That lift you have in the final corner is barely anything, so it hasn't really lost you anything. Not significantly anyway. You do go down an extra gear, so you're down to first. That's interesting. Steering traces are pretty similar. You have slightly more angle on the left-hander, but that's because you slightly missed the apex, so you're kind of having to turn back towards it. So that's not a major problem. And again, your minimum speed was lower, but actually you then gain that back through the next part. So let's completely leave alone the second half of the lap. because you are, if not matching, sometimes even beating what I was doing through there. It's these early corners where all the time can come. And if you fix turn 1, you just match my lap time straight out of the box. So let's do a couple more laps this time because it's quite a short track. So let's say maybe 7 timed laps on this one. So you've got a fair chance to get something representative on. But with the big focus being on coming off the brakes earlier and carrying more speed up to the apex of turn 1. And similarly, the corner that leads onto the long straight, onto the hanger straight, we want to just carry more entry speed. So basically just trust the car a little bit more on the entry. And just for full comparison, I'm going to give you a point to aim for at turn 1. So like where we want to turn in. So if we're currently turning in, you're naturally turning in roughly by this penultimate black bit of the curb. So the second to last black stripe is where you're currently turning in. I want you to turn in instead. And you might miss the corner a couple of times to begin with because you're going to have to basically get used to this extra speed.
Right.
But I want you to turn in. Let's just wind it back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 black blocks back. Maybe 4 by the time I've actually got off the curb. So here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So before we're going to be leaving the curb. I know it's hard to count this. Yeah, we're going to be leaving the curb before we get to. Oh, that's the wrong one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's the 5th one that I'm coming off the curb on, and you were coming off on the 2nd one. So that gives you an idea of how much earlier we want to go and what it should look like from the cockpit. Because remember, we're now no longer aiming to be on the right on the exit. You want to give yourself the freedom to use the full track width on the exit of turn 1. So if I just do this in slow-mo, you can see I'm barely having to use any steering angle at all. I've barely got any steering angle. Now I'm increasing as we get to the very tightest point. But the freedom is going to be, we're going to aim to end up over here. There's a reason there's an exit curb over here. That's because this is where everyone goes. Because this next left is so gentle that you just don't need to open it up. And I think mentally you are forcing yourself to open it up in order to carry that speed. So I'm just going to show you in full speed that the car will easily go through this next one on full throttle. I know you can't hear it, but trust me, this is full throttle from now. It's foot to the floor. And you see I still managed to get all the way to this curb here for the next turn. Right, cool. Okay, so I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you drive. I'm going to go back on mute. By the way, have you got any questions before I just send you off? I know I've just talked for like 15 minutes at you.
I think generally that all makes sense. It's funny because if you'd asked me, I would have told you I was losing all my time in the last half of the lap. So
okay, interesting.
Very good. Yeah, I think the what we're talking about carrying less speed because I feel comfortable in this first half of the lap right now.
Okay.
But that,
we want it to feel less comfortable. Yeah, we want it. And it will feel more comfortable the more you've done it at the higher speed. But yeah, I think it's just a bit too comfortable at the moment.
And that's a balance I've been trying to find with especially with the GT4s. Is it feels like when I first started driving them, I tended to want to overdrive, like almost try to hustle them a little bit too much. And so yeah, still trying to play with the balance. So this is all very good to know.
Awesome. Okay, at least we know for sure there's a chunk of time available, even if it was just turn 1. So let's give it a try. All right, I'm going back on mute.
Okay. So I switch back and forth. I didn't have it on this run. I find sometimes when I have the Delta on, I spend too much time just driving to the Delta and not watching the track. The little in-car lap diff though, yeah, I mean you could immediately see it go green. Let me hop all the way out. I was just in the pits. So. Right. Sure. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah. It's- Right. Yeah, it clipped. Almost got the grass a little. Yes. Sure. If you do. Yeah, it looks like you're not starting to brake until you're turning, which I think. Right. 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 Okay. Okay. So,
Just realised I had my mic turned off for all of that. For video. What I was just saying was, in the slow speed stuff, this half of the lap, on this run, we just want to put it to bed. Don't give away a tenth by missing a curb, you know, just make sure we get to it. That's decent. We went in slightly early, but not a massive problem. So just kind of tick the box of this end of the track. If we then were to come back and, if you nailed turn 1, and we then move to the next lowest hanging bit of fruit, then we would look at those corners. And this is the bit to get used to. Yes, use that curb. That wasn't the neatest. We went in a little bit. Ooh, that's a long curb. And if we got away with it, great. Last lap was a 109.3. Amazing. So we've done a 109.6 and 109.3. Amazing. This is much better than. That's it. Keep this section tidy. And 194. This is good. Yes, Jeff. Yes, Jeff. That was great. So, brake earlier this time. Please keep this tidy. Not bad, not bad. Good line into here. Ooh, a bit too early into there. First few turns were awesome on that lap. We just got a little bit greedy into that one corner. But you're doing a great job. Ah, did we get a slow down? Must have got a slow down. Hard to find that balance. Brake early. Oof, good job. Okay, not too greedy here. Just quite greedy. That's it, off the brakes. Yes, that'll do, unless that's a slow down. Maybe. Ooh, good job through there. Do one more, Jeff. Do one more, just so we've had an opportunity to get a great one on. Well done. That's tidier. That's tidier. Great job, man. Really, really good. That was a bit of an improvement as a session. So, okay, yeah, we didn't gain like another half a second or something crazy, but we went from doing like 1 minute 10s and then, you know, one golden 1 minute 9.5 to basically consistently being in the mid to low 109s, apart from if there was like a mistake. So that was a big improvement. I'm going to look at the data from that lap. I know we've overrun a bit, but I'd still just like to see this if you're okay.
Sure.
I just want to see exactly how that last one stacks up. So let's add a lap. So this is the one. Lovely. So I'm going to remove your no, in fact, let's keep this and let's change it to like bright neon pinky purple. That'll do. Let's have a look. Okay, I appreciate there's now a lot of lines, but again, you've moved closer. So, and it was turn 1. So you can really, really see. Oh, if we go and just look at the first corner again, hopefully you can see pretty clearly.
Yeah.
The purple pinky line is, again, you've halved the gap between what you did on the previous run to what is possible. I'm not saying that what I'm doing is absolutely the maximum possible, but, you know, at least it is possible, even if it's not the very best. And you've really changed your braking. If you look down here at the braking traces, look how much more similar you are now to the way that I'm doing it into there. It's not exactly the same, but each time you've moved significantly. Like, your technique has gone... In those 3 or 4 runs, your technique has shifted dramatically through that one corner, and your lap time gain as a consequence of it is significant too. So what happened on this one? Yeah, so right up to, I'm just looking at the delta, up to turn 3, you are ahead again. You actually ultimately then lost some of that time in the middle, the next couple of corners on that lap. So you did the following section. We obviously went a bit deep or something. We can have a look at that. Oh, we overslowed it. That's interesting. Into the hairpin. Ah, yeah, you went really deep into the hairpin on that lap. And then you lost a bunch of time. So actually, you went from being a 10th quicker than your previous run to being 0.2 slower in the next couple of fiddly corners. So actually, you would have done... That would have been like a 109.1, potentially. Without that, that was kind of this section here. And then you lost... on the exit of there all the way down the Hanger Straight. But turn 1, the bit we're focusing on, was clearly better. So ignoring all the rest, because we weren't really looking at that, this is lovely and clear. So I'm really happy with that. And again, I know that's just one corner on one track, but you have just, in the space of an hour or so, can fundamentally change the way you approach like a slightly less than 90-degree high-speed corner in this car. And the fact that you were able to do that just by me asking you to, and you got that close, like, that's really, really similar now. Very similar. The rest of that is just seat time.
Okay.
That suggests to me that you'd be the kind of person who would respond very well to specific coaching at a specific track for a specific reason. So rather than, you know, if you were always doing something massively wrong, or you had some fundamental concepts that you just didn't grasp because you were new, then general coaching is kind of very useful. Like, I got a guy this afternoon who can't keep the car on the track for one lap, so we're not really at the point where it matters about looking at getting the best possible lap at Brands Hatch, because that's this week's Formula Ford or whatever. But you, because you respond so well, like, to instant, we'd say, oh, change this thing, and you just do it, and there's a clear gain immediately. You would be really, really good for, you know, say you had an event on next week and you just wanted to be the quickest you possibly could be in the Mercedes GT3 or whatever it was. I think you would find significant time from, like, standalone sessions, if that makes sense. So hit me up if you ever want to do that. Or if you want to, you know, if there is a series that you want to do this season, if you want to do GT4 or GT3 or whatever, and you want to have just like a pre-week brush up to make sure you're as quick as you can be at whatever the next track is. I think we've just shown there that we can zone in quite efficiently on the low-hanging fruit, if there is any. and you're gonna like take a quick jump in time. So yeah, if you want any more runs, that was cool. It was nice working with you.
Awesome, thank you. That was all very, very helpful.
I'm gonna stop the recording. I'll send you the